بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه وبعد. وعن أنس رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من كف غضبه كف الله عنه عذابه أخرجه الطبراني في الأوسط وله شاهد من حديث ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما عند ابن أبي الدنيا. Anas narrated that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, if one restrained his anger, Allah will keep his punishment from him, obviously in the day of resurrection. Related by Tabarani in Al-Awsat. Al-Awsat is a collection for Tabarani. Tabarani has 3 books called Mu'jam. One is called Al-Kabir, the major, and Al-Awsat, the middle, and Al-Saghir, the minor, or the smaller one. So this is in Al-Awsat, and this hadith also is supported by another narration on the authority of the son of Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, Abdullah, the son of Umar ibn al-Khattab, related to us by Ibn Abi Dunya rahimahullah. This hadith, the concept is acceptable, the meaning is correct, but the isnad, the chain of narration, and the narrators, not all of them are trustworthy. That's why Hadith Anas, the first hadith, is actually a very weak because of a man, his name Khalid ibn Baradiwah. al-Bukhari rahimahullah قال لا يتابع وقال القلاس أنه كذاب. He is not a person who's worth to narrate from, al-Bukhari saying, or even to look at his narration in any form. And some ulama accuse him being a liar. So when you have someone who's been criticized to that level, their hadith cannot be accepted. Cannot be accepted. And it means very, very weak. That's why Ibn Hajar said, and it is another hadith kind of supported, which is the narration of Ibn Umar. What's the narration of Ibn Umar? Ibn Hajar didn't tell us, but the narration that he was referring to by Ibn Umar, it says, من كف لسانه ستر الله عورته. If you control your tongue, Allah will not expose your mistakes. ومن ملك غضبه وقاه الله عذابه. And if you control your anger and you restrain your anger, Allah will protect you from His punishment. ومن اعتذر إلى الله قبل عذره. And if you apologize to Allah for your sin and mistakes, Allah will accept your apology. But yet, this narration from Ibn Umar also is not that authentic. It has Hisham ibn Abi Ibrahim. Anyway, the hadith has many different narration here and there, all of them very weak, but the concept, the meaning is acceptable. That's why some said حسن لغيره, يعني one of the lowest level of acceptance, if we can say that, this hadith can reach, but I do believe it is weak. But hadith talking about controlling your anger and staying away from the thing that causes you angry, and we have discussed this issue before in authentic ahadith. I will refer you to it. The second hadith, وعن أبي بكر الصديق رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يدخل الجنة خب ولا بخيل ولا سيء الملكة. طيب لا يدخل الجنة خب ولا بخيل ولا سيء الملكة. سيء الملكة من الملك يعني. The hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said, this hadith reported by Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Nabi ﷺ said, a crafty person or a devious person, a miser, and one who badly treats those under his authority will not enter paradise. So 3 people, and Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam warned them that they will not enter paradise. Who are they? the crafty or the devious person, the one who deceives people, who mislead people, who trick people, and the miser, stingy person, and the one who badly treats those under his authority. وهو سيء الملكة يعني الذي يسيء إلى مماليكه ومن تحت يده. This hadith reported by Tirmidhi in two separate traditions, and there is a weakness in its chain of narrator again. And it is weak because it has Farqad ibn Yaqub, and he is weak, as al-Bukhari and al-Nasa'i and Imām رحمه الله recognize him as weak. طيب قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال يعني لا يدخل الجنة, when he said will not enter Jannah. You remember we talked about this phrase before. It's important to always remind you of it. لا يدخل الجنة يعني لا يدخل الجنة ابتداء لأن هذه الأعمال ليست مكفرة. These sins do not take you out of the fold of Islam. So when he said you will not enter Jannah, yani you will not enter Jannah directly. You will not before you are asked, before you are judged, or you will not enter Jannah among the earliest group, or you will not enter Jannah to the highest level. We have to يجعل لها شيء من التأويل حتى توافق النصوص الأخرى. So it will meet the other evidence that we have that any believer, anyone who says La ilaha illallah and believe in it and do not negate La ilaha illallah will enter Jannah. And these things do not negate La ilaha illallah. So this person doesn't enter Jannah among the earliest and so forth. لا يدخل الجنة خب, a crafty or devious person. Al-khib and al-khab, both ways are correct to be pronounced. Khib wa khab, both ways. وهو الرجل الخادع. And not only the one who's crafty, not only the one who's devious, the one who crafty and devious, but also the one who cause problems through his, through his deceiving. He caused problem, which is I deceive you, I take your money, I trick you, and so forth. So this is the person. سيء الملكة, okay, بمعنى الملك, يملكه ملكا. When somebody have people under his authority. In the old days, they refer to the person who owns slaves. Also can own people work for him, like let's say a landlord, or people who has a farm and there is farmers working for him. Any person who has authority over others, okay, that person, if he treat them bad, doesn't deserve to enter Jannah, as the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said. Obviously, among the earliest or the highest or the most honorable, his iman is not complete. This shows you his iman is, or her iman is less. That's why they punish by that. What we learn from this hadith? Among the worst of people, the one who deceive others. Yet this hadith, among all other hadith, يتكلم عن العلاقات الاجتماعية, social interactions. Islam focus a lot on this, that when we interact with each other as a society, it has to be clarity, trust. And if we betray each other trust, there's no community, there's no society. I love what it's been said about trust. Trust is like a blood pressure, like your blood pressure. It is silent. Okay, trust is not through words, through interactions. Okay, it is fatal, and it can be deadly if you abuse it. Your blood pressure. The same thing with trust. It's fatal, and if you abuse trust, you destroy the relationship. Can you imagine if you abuse the trust between you and your children, between you and your wife or your husband, between you and your community? That's it. You're done. I don't know, the only people who abuse trust and they still survive, I don't know how, are the Republicans. I mean, as the politicians, I don't know why, no matter how Many times they betrayed and abused that trust, they still get elected. Anyway, yeah, go to Cancun and find out. That's a good one. Right. Going back to the point, those who deceive people, who mislead people, and politicians is a good example of people deceive you, give you all these promises, but empty promises. Okay? Also, another deceiver, in my opinion, the players. The one who will make, girls or boys fall in love with them. But when she fall in love with you, you don't catch her. You let her crash. When he fall in love with her, she just let him crash. Just playing around, messing around. That's deceiver. Another deceiver, the person, and that's a'udhu billah, unfortunately common. How many you have met in your life? People come to tell you, hey, invest with me, I have this investment or this, and he take your money and never see him again. A deceiver. Khib. Also among the people who makir, crafty, he give you very sweet talk, but he really want to destroy your home, destroy your relationship with your family, with your community. Those people are very dangerous. And we talked before about the people who have multiple faces and stuff like that. So anyone who will cause damage in relationships between you and your family, between you and your community, between you and your friends, belong to that group who Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam warned them that they don't deserve to enter Jannah. Also stinginess and miserness, and we talked about this before, but this hadith shows how ugly and bad this quality is. And obviously, stinginess, we said two levels. The level that is sin and the level that is not a sin. It's just a bad character trait. The sin, when you're in stinginess and miserness, stop you from fulfilling the obligation. Like giving the zakat and or giving the penalties. Like a guy was telling him, he has to feed people. He has to or clothe people because of a violation he made. He made an oath and he did not fulfill the oath. حلف وأقسم ولا وفى بالقسم. So I told him, he said, Sheikh, I have like 50. And he said, you have to feed basically 10 people for each one of them. I said, Sheikh, no, I will fast. I said, you can't fast, actually. It's not an option. You have to feed. If you don't have the money, you go fast. You want to fast just not to pay, Or people like he doesn't want to give the zakat just because he thinks it's too much. That stinginess is basically is a sin. But other than that, which is stinginess, which is not going to lead to not fulfilling the obligation, that's just a bad character trait. أيضا هذا الحديث shows you that it's a sin and it is haram and it's a major sin actually, that you abuse the people that you have authority over. People you are in charge of and you abuse them, that's a major sin in Islam. Like people work for you, like poor workers. And these days we all hear about, the issue of treating, workers fair and good and so forth. It's important not to abuse them, not to abuse the people who volunteer with you, the people you are in charge of, like family members, children, orphan that you run, organization that you have, and you have people you're in charge of, you don't abuse them. And abuse, any form of abuse, the abuse sometimes can come in the form of underpaid. The abuse can you give me an example? Ahmed, you're in a company. Did you work in HR for a little bit? Okay, no. What abuse that happening in today in world, in corporate world? Underpaid. What else? Huh? Treating people differently. Yeah. What a form of abuse.
Making people work overtime without paying them.
Very good. Sometimes even if you pay them, making them work overtime and you don't pay them. Or you making them work things different than what you have contracted them to do. Yani ask me about it. I lived overseas. wallahi, Sheikh, you will become a driver and the guy and do everything for the boss. Pick his kids and do this and do that and you babysitter and all this just because your boss wants you. This is my job. You know? Anyway, so that's another one. Also, part of the abuse is what? Respect. You treat them like nothing. That's not correct. You should show respect to the people who work for you or work with you. Doesn't matter if you own or if you are a manager. طيب. Also respecting their rights, their privacy, their contract and so forth, their time and so forth. Abuse is something terrible to be done to the people who under your authority. You just be careful. Another form of abuse for people or for someone you're in charge of can be also similar to this hadith. قال وما ملكت يعني they are control of animals. If you are a pet owner, for example, you're not allowed to abuse. Do you remember the hadith the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said about the cat? That it enter hellfire. A woman enter hellfire because of a cat. That she abused the cat. She's in charge of it. She did not treat the cat good. She did not feed the cat until the cat died. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم رأيتها تخمش وجهها وصدرها في النار. I saw this woman in hellfire and the cat scratching this woman's face and chest in hellfire. Also among the abuse, abuse the cat or any pet that you don't feed them, you hit them. And we know in history today, like animal fight and all these kind of things that you hear about, just people want to have a good video clip in TikTok and they don't mind to abuse their animal just because they want a clip and just, funny thing. That's wrong. يحكى. Have you ever heard this name, الزمخشري? الزمخشري هذا واحد من كبار علماء التفسير ولا كبار ولا شيء من كبار المعتزلة. He is a famous Mu'tazili, influenced by Mu'tazili, but his tafsir is very famous. His tafsir is very, very famous. He focused a lot on Arabic language and grammars and stuff like that. هذا الزمخشري له قصة. He was one leg man. He was asked, how did you lose your leg? قال فقدت قدمي رجلي بدعوة أمي. My mother prayed against me and I lost my leg. Listen, mother, be careful what you pray for. What happened? When he was young, كان عنده عصفور. He has a bird. He tied the bird's leg with a rope, with a thread. And he doesn't want the bird to fly away, and the bird will not stay. He's not putting the bird in a cage. So every time the bird goes, he will pull the bird the bird will cry, will try harder, and he pulled. Then one day he did, and what happened? He pulled the legs off from the bird. His mother was so angry, and she said, قطع الله رجلك كما قطعت رجله. She was angry at her son. She said, may Allah cut your leg off like what you have done to this bird. And he said, and her dua hit me. قال فما ترون هو من دعوة أمي علي. What you see is my mother dua. But again, the point is abusing the animals. On the other hand, كان واحد من كبار علماء أهل الكلام أيضا, among the people who went to the philosophy way, al-Amidi, Saif al-Din al-Amidi. This is just a contrast. Saif al-Din al-Amidi had a cat. He loved it so much. He loved that cat so much. Okay? It was so dear to him, taking good care of it. When the cat died, he buried it. Al-Amidi had one of the top name in what? In Usul al-Fiqh. and in philosophy, okay? Saif ad-Din Amidi. فلما مات القطة, when his cat died, he loved it so much. When he moved from his country to Damascus, to Bilad al-Sham, to Dimashq, okay, he ordered to be dug out. He dug out the cat and he took the bones with him to where he going, so it will be buried next to him. So he always, have the grave and the remaining of the cat next to him. كان من شدة تعلق بها حتى حمل عظامها معه لما انتقل. He carried the cat with him after he buried the cat. He wanted to be buried where he is. I mean, it's interesting, يعني, how much he had mercy and love and attachment to that cat. طيب. Another lessons from this hadith. إذا أعطاك الله ملكة لا تستعملها إلا في الخير. إياك تستعملها في الشر. If Allah give you something special, use it in the good way, not in the bad way. The crafty and the devious and it's a smart person. He's a sweet talker. He knows how to manipulate people. So make sure, these are tools. These are very great talents. But it became evil because you used it for something bad. So always take from this a lesson. Anything that Allah, you're good at it, use it in what is good. طيب. وعن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الله أكبر من تسمى حديث قوم وهم له كارهون صب في أذنيه الآنك يوم القيامة يعني الرصاص أخرجه البخاري. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if anyone listen to the talk of some people, when they don't like him to do that, then molten or melted lead will be poured into his ears on the day of resurrection. So a melted lead will be poured in his ear in the day, or his ears in the day of resurrection. Reported by al-Bukhari. Then the narrator said, آنك الآنك عفوا الآنك بضم النون الآنك. He said الآنك is the lead, the melted lead. So he said al-anuk. Then he explained what this word means, because it's not a common word in Arabic. This hadith reported by al-Bukhari, and it has a beginning and an end. This is just in the middle of the hadith. The hadith goes, من تحلم بحلم لم يره كلف أن يعقد بين شعيرتين ولن يفعل. If you claim a dream that you never saw, you will be giving two barleys to connect them together, and you will never be able to do it. Can you try, never, you can't do it. And وَمَنْ صَوَّرَ, then the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, then he said after that, and whoever listened to people while they don't want him to do that, they don't like to be listened to, in the day of judgment, melted lead will be poured into that person's ear. Then in the end of the hadith he said, وَمَنْ صَوَّرَ صُورَةً, and if you made an image of something, عُذِّبْ, you will be punished. And وَكُلِّفَ أَنْ يُنْفِخَ فِيهَا وَلَيْسَ بِنَافٍ, and you will be asked, blow into it a soul, and he wouldn't be able to do so. So he only took the middle part of the hadith, which is related to the issue of interacting with each other. What this hadith, مَنْ تَسَمَّعَ. He said, in Ibn Hajar here in this book, in his book, he said, مَنْ تَسَمَّعَ. But if you look at the narrations in al-Bukhari, at least the printed copies that we have, it doesn't have مَنْ تَسَمَّعَ. It has مَنْ اسْتَمَعَ. In the end of the day, it has the same meaning, but the format is a little bit different. Okay? من تسمع, it's in Musnad al-Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala. And both means what? It means you intentionally try to listen. Both. It means it's not like overheard. No. You intentionally listen. Two, تعطي معنى التستر والخفية. Both means that you are listening to them in a hidden way while they're not realizing that you are listening. Okay? So that's what this hadith talking about. Someone listening to people in a hidden way while they're not realizing that they are being heard, and you intentionally try to listen. We call this, what's today, also another word for it, spying. Okay? وَهُمْ لَهُ كَارِهُونَ. Yani they didn't want to be heard by that person. And Nabi Sallallahu said, صُبَّ أُفْرِغ, yani it will be pour in his ears. في أذنيه, ears, plural. This is in Muslim Ahmad. Again, in the copy that we have from al-Bukhari, ear, one, single one. But in Muslim Ahmad, both ears. يعني it could be, it's the same concept, يعني same point. الآنك يعني الرصاص المذاب. الرصاص المذاب or الرصاص الخالص. Pure lead. Okay. Who said that? الآنك, it means pure lead. Okay. This is a man who, the narrator who said that, his name is Ismail ibn Ulayya. Ismail ibn Ulayya, one of the narrators of the hadith. Ismail ibn Ulayya. Ulayya is his mom, his mother. His father, his name is Ismail ibn Ibrahim. Why a person will be called after his mom when his mother is very famous and very well known, and his mother, she was very well known. Al-ulama used to come, and كانت تبرز إليهم وتحدثهم. She will come out of her house and talk to them and address them, and they will talk back and forth with her. And she was very outspoken woman in her time, رحمها الله تعالى. كان يعني وجوه فقهاء البصرة ووجوهها يدخلون عليها تبرز لهم وتحدثهم وتسائلهم. And one time, even when they talk about her, نبيلة عاقلة, a noble, wise woman. Okay, her big house known in al-Basra. So that's why you will be called about a woman very famous like that. Even one day she came to a great scholar named Abdul Warith ibn Sa'id, and this narrator Ismail, her son, was very young, like the young man here, and she said, "Scholar, I want my son to be in your company so he can learn from your akhlaq, from your manner. He work with you, he lives with you. In the old days they used to do that. Okay? وكان من أجمل غلمان البصرة. Ismail ibn Ulayya was one of the most handsome boy in al-Basra. Very, and why do you mention handsome boy? It shows you, not because he's handsome and good looking, she want to spoil him. No, she took him to be with this person and to be in his house and to work hard. They want to make a point here. كان إسماعيل ibn Ulayya, by the way, he was born in the same year Al-Hasan al-Basri died. The same year Hasan al-Basri died, Ismail ibn Ulayya was born. Okay? And that was 110 Hijri. And he died 194, I think. 194. And how many years he lived? 8 years, yeah. 194. He was a faqih, he was an imam, muhaddith, and he was very, very accurate in his memory. To the extent they said there is none in al-Basra, or al-Kufa, or like he lived in al-Kufa, rahimahullah also. None of the people of his generation can match him in accuracy and memorization. He used to say, "Man qala ibn Ulayya igtabani." He said, anyone says, the son of Ulayya have backbite me, because I hate to be called after my mom. I want to be called for my dad, like any normal person. Why will you call me after my mom? الذهبي رحمه الله قال وهذا سوء خلق منه رحمه الله. He said that's a bad manner from this alim. He said it's a bad manner from him to say that. What we do, الذهبي said, that's how he became famous. Yani whenever we want to identify someone we refer to him by his famous name. Can you imagine if you say Waleed Khalid? I don't like Basyouni. I mean, nobody knows what's for Waleed Khalid. That's right. So it's going to be hard. Or Abu Abdul Rahman. How would you know that? خلاص, الذهبي said, rahimahullah, this is how you became famous with. Why would you say we make ghiba to you? How come he feel uncomfortable with that while the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam called several people by referring to them as the son of, then he mentioned his mother instead of his father. And great men, like there's no insulting or disrespect or anything. For example, he said, الذهبي, it's very famous, يقال عمار ibn Sumayya. It's very famous. النبي قال عمار ibn Sumayya. And was Zubayr ibn Safiya. Zubayr, the son of Safiya. And Ammar, the son of Sumayya. If this is how the Prophet referred to them, you should not have a problem with us telling you Ibn Ulayya. Anyway, the Abu Dawood, you know the famous book of Hadith, Abu Dawood, Sunan Abu Dawood. Abu Dawood, rahimahullah, said, every scholars have mistakes when it comes to memorization, except Ismail ibn Ulayya. I couldn't find a single mistake in his narration. The level of accuracy, okay? Anyway, Amr ibn Zurar al-Nisaburi said, I was in the company of Ibn Ulayya 14 years. I never saw him smiling. قال ما رأيته تبسم قط. Never smiled. So الذهبي رحمه الله said, that's not a praise. الذهبي doesn't let it go. He said, that's not something to be praised with. But maybe he was someone who was always thinking about the akhirah and stuff like that. But not, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to smile a lot. Anyway, the reason I'm talking about Ibn Ulayya, because it's a good case study. Even though with his accuracy, with everything that you just heard about how they praise him, and there is much more to be said. Yet, the ulama rahimahumullah had a little bit of negative position towards him, especially toward the end of his life, and they distanced themselves from him, with admitting that his memorization is excellent. But they have two problems with Ibn Ulayya. The first one, in the end of his life, he agreed to work for the government, for the Abbasi. فَقَبِلَ وِلَايَةَ الصَّدَقَاتِ. He became the person in charge of distributing the zakat and the sadaqah, and like a treasurer. Okay? وَلِيَ صَدَقَاتِ الْبَصْرَةِ in al-Basra. وَوَلِيَ بِبَغْدَادِ الْمَظَالِمِ. Then they raised him up to another level. They brought him to Baghdad, to the capital, and they gave him a position to be in charge of like a supreme judge. Okay? Like an appeal court في المظالم. In the end of Harun al-Rashid's time. That made the ulama furious with him. That he started taking money. And he said, I only did because I have family and they don't have money. Ibn Mubarak wrote to him a letter, has lines of poetry. That these poetry became very, very famous. That very rare not to find a student of knowledge unless he knows them or memorized them. At least one or two lines in it. He said, يا جاعل العلم له بازيا يصطاد أموال المساكين احتلت للدنيا ولذاتها بحيلة تذهب بالدين فصرت مجنونا بها بعدما كنت دواء للمجانين. He said, you're one who using knowledge, like, when you go hunt, some people hunt with dogs and some people hunt with what? Birds, the eagle or the falcon. Okay? So he said, you make your ilm like a falcon. Catch for you money, using the knowledge to make money, to get positions. You are after the dunya and after the reward of the dunya, even though if that will make you lose your deen, your faith. You became crazy about this life, about this worldly life, crazy about power and wealth, after you used to be the cure for this kind of disease. مجنونا بها بعدما كنت دواء للمجانين. بعد انت اللي تبعد الناس عن الدنيا صرت مجنون بالدنيا. أين رواياتك في من مضى? Where is the narration that you know from ابن عون وابن سيرين? Then he said ودرسك للعلم بآثاره في ترك أبواب السلاطين. Where are all the narrations that you taught us and you narrate for us about avoiding the rulers and not to come closer to them and not to stay around them? تقول أكرهت. You're saying they forced me? فماذا؟ لا you were not forced. قال بل زل حمار العلم في الطين. What happened is, he called him حمار. You're a donkey who stuck in the mud. لا تبع الدنيا بالدين كما يفعل ضلال الرهابين. Don't be like the misguided monks from nations before us who gave up the dunya for the emperors and for like control by kings and stuff like that. As you know, the corruption that happened in the medieval time. That's very strong words, and they were very, very aggressive against them. But the other one even was worse, which has made the scholar very aggressive against him, that he have said certain words made him sound like he agreeing with the government at that time in a big bid'ah, which is خلق القرآن. That the Quran is not Allah's speech, it is one of his creation. And Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala, Al-Khatib Baghdadi mentioned that, and Imam Ahmad rahimahullah was asked about Ibn Ulayya. Okay, then is he better or Wuhayb? Then he said Wuhayb. And as for Ibn Ulayya, he was a great Imam. But the scholar of hadith have rejected him and ignored him after what he did. And he talked about Al-Quran in a way which is not appropriate. Then the one who was asking him, he said, didn't he repent? Raja. And he declared his tawbah in front of people? He said, yes. But the scholar of hadith didn't like him. And as a result, he didn't like the scholar of hadith in return. SubhanAllah. They were aggressive against him because of these two, the scholars of hadith. So he had a reaction towards the scholar of hadith. وَكَانَ لَا يُنصِفْ. And he was not fair with the scholars of hadith. He said also, وَكَانَ sometimes he would narrate the hadith based on connection. If somebody come from government or prince or something like that, he would narrate the hadith. And we don't like that. Hadith should be given to people regardless of their status. It should not connect to any kind of reward, worldly reward. Anyway, one time Imam Ahmad said, rahimahullah, Imam Ahmad is not Ibn Ulayya older than him. So he said one time, one from Al-Ansar, his grandfather from Al-Ansar, was here and he was visiting the scholar. So he took me with him to meet Ibn Ulayya. So when Ibn Ulayya saw me, غضب. And he said, who let this man to come in? Because Ahmad from Ulama al-Hadith. He said, get him out. I don't want to see him. Get out. He doesn't want to see Ahmad because he knows that he's a scholar of hadith and he have a reaction towards any scholars from hadith. So Al-Dhahabi rahimahullah said, if we know this story, so you know why Imam Ahmad didn't like him much too. That's understandable. As if Al-Dhahabi telling you that Imam Ahmad, when he preferred Wuhayb over him, not necessarily because Wuhayb, no, because it's a natural reaction from Ahmad that he will choose to narrate from the one that he feel more comfortable with. Yet, Imam Ahmad rahimahullah said, Amma ibn Ulayya, and this is the point I want to share with you, to show you how sincere the ulama were. He was asked, what do you think after this incident? Take this in consideration. And Imam Ahmad said, Ibn Ulayya thiqatun thabt. Ibn Ulayya is an accurate, trustworthy narrator. No doubt about it. And Shuf Imam Ahmad, it's nothing personal. Anyway, he had 3 children, okay, and they're very famous. One of them famous for something bad, and two for good. One of them was judge, and the other one was a great scholar in hadith. أما الثالث, his name is إبراهيم ibn إسماعيل ibn علية. His name Ibrahim. أما هذا فكان شيطانا جهميا يناظر في البدع وناظره الشافعي رحمه الله وحجه. He was an evil, misguided man. His son Ibrahim and Imam al-Shafi'i had famous debates with him. Anyway, what we learn from the hadith? Number one, listening to people who are talking while they don't allow you, they don't want to be heard, is a major sin in Islam. Major sin. Why do we know major sin? Because there is a very specific punishment in hellfire for such people. So that means هذه من أحد الكواشف للكبائر أن ينص على عذاب الإنسان في النار. When the Prophet specifically mentioned what kind of punishment for this sin in hellfire, that means this sin is a major sin. And part of this is to listen to their phone conversation. When I put surveillance, yeah, when you start listening to people call, which is, haram. Or some people have these machines that they, I remember when I was young, I remember some of the kids like in college and stuff like that, oh, so proud of this, like it used to catch the talk, and because in the old days, we don't have cell phones, we have the satellite phones and stuff like that. So I remember people used to listen to calls and they leak this kind of information and listen to what they say. That's haram. Also, can you imagine today how like these people can hack into your Alexa or, and listen to what you say inside your home? All these are absolutely forbidden. Or somebody will listen to the conversation. Unfortunately today, when they rent their apartment and they listen to what they're saying, that's not allowed. طيب. This hadith shows you that spying on people, violating their privacy, is forbidden. Protecting people's privacy is something in Islam cared for 1,400 years ago. So this is way before our civil rights and talk and all this kind of thing, that good thing that you hear about today. This is something we talk about from long time ago. Exceptions were made, as I will make you aware of it in 5 minutes, and we'll wrap it up. Another lesson that we learn from this hadith, the Prophet said, karihun, when people don't want you to listen, they don't like you to listen. Either they say it, or their actions shows that. Like what? What kind of action that you might do shows that this is a private conversation? Yes? Moving away. Two people move away. And you, mashallah, go next to them. I still remember when we were sitting a circle at certain time in Saudi Arabia, in Haram. Man, the whole entire place is empty. Me and 2-3 people sitting. And from the whole entire place, there is not, Haram. This guy came, and right where I'm sitting, Allahu Akbar. Literally like this. At least go straight. And he has ihram on, but you can see he was wearing like underpants, under the ihram. You can see it clearly. Colored one even. At least, if you want to spy and you became undercover, at least, anyway. So, listening to people conversation, I'm like alone, sitting away. What else? We lower our voice. That means it's private. Talk in the phone, that's private. We close the door, that's private. Talk. You don't go sneak, طيب. Another one of the worst form of spying on people, when you spy on people to lead the enemy against them, which is espionage, we call this, right? Which is you basically you spy, you listen to what people, then you give it to the enemy of the ummah of the Muslims or of your country, whatever. You spy on them till you can report to them. Not because they did anything wrong, but you just want to make them bad or evil and so on. طيب, spying on the enemy for the right cause, it is permissible. A CIA operative, I don't want to make an example because I don't know what kind of rules and regulation, but I just want to make it clear to you. Spying for the right reason, for the right cause, for the good cause is allowed. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent spies. As Jabir radiallahu anh said in the day of Al-Ahzab, he said, who will spy on the people of our enemy? 3 times Zubair volunteer. And also in another incident in Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam al-Hudaybiyah, he said he will go spy on them and see what they're doing. So somebody went and he listened to what they say and he came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when it comes to war and a state regulated, where there is rules and regulation to guide it, that's fine. The same thing when a person would spy for criminals. People plot. Okay? People will do drugs, crime, criminals. Can you spy on them? And ulama rahimahullah said, if you have qara'in, like a supportive evidence to make those people suspicious, it's the same concept that we have today, that you go to a grand jury or you go to a judge and you take, for example, from the judge, warrant for you to be able to tap somebody's phone, and then the judge will review it every 6 months. This system, which is, I consider very unique, very good, protecting your rights, blah, blah, blah. This system have roots originally in our religion, our Sharia. And al-Fuqaha talked about it from 1,000 years ago. And they talk, but one of the difference that beside you have a regulations from within the Department of Justice to oversight these kind of things, in our religion you have صب في أذنه الآنك. The Muslim also remember what the Prophet ﷺ said, that in the day of judgment that there is this severe punishment if you violate the rules. If you spy for not a right valid reason. You have Allah is overwatching you. And that's the difference between a civilization that have a good laws but combined with faith, with deen, with iman, with taqwa, with God conscious, versus just rules. Dry rules, versus no rules at all and no God conscious, and you have levels. But that's why the Muslim Ummah at one time was really a leading civilization, because they have these regulations beside the iman and the moral system, and that's something like very unique. We'll end here inshallah next week. We talked about the rest of the hadith. Thank you. Jazakumullah khair. Subhanallah. If anybody has a comment or hadith question, otherwise we'll call for tonight, inshallah.
There was a section of hadith where it mentioned on the day of resurrection, it will be poured into the earth. So, does that mean it's poured before the judgment?
No. Let me just hold us back. When the Prophet said on the day of judgment, that can mean multiple things. Can be in hellfire, and after people go to hellfire. Could also means in the land of gathering. In the land of gathering. And yes, before the judgment, before the passing. Because while people waiting for the judgment, you will see people have a different status. Like people, for example, the Prophet give to us, people, for example, will have reward and punishment. Long neck like the mu'adhins, and the people who are surrounded with darkness. Okay? Surrounded with darkness. And that's the one who've been abusing others, the unfair. People carrying things on their back, which is whoever stole, when somebody steals something from the war booties or from the public wealth, will be carrying it on their back. You know, a snake will chase them in the land of resurrection, catch them, bite them. This is the wealth that you never give zakat of. You know, so all this happened actually before the judgment, as if it seems to be. Can some of these happen after the? Can be. We don't have really clarity like on this area, but we know for some of these, they be in the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People in sweat. That's before the judgment take place. So when the Prophet said, in the day of judgment, it could means at the gathering or at the resurrection, because you resurrect, you are gathered, okay? Then you are judged, then you go to your way to Jannah and to hellfire and to paradise and to the Sirat and all this. And just for you to, don't think of it's like, okay, it's just like 1 hour or something like that. For the mu'mineen, very fast, but for people in general, Ibn Abbas said it's 50,000 years. 50,000 sana. Ibn Abbas said it's 50 stages. Each stage is 1,000 years to finish. So when you see this and you read that, you understand that this is a very big, large amount of time. Can be a lot of suffering and a lot of purifications or a lot of punishment even before arriving to the hellfire. And one of the things we know, as Imam Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah said, Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn al-Qayyim and others as well, the punishment and the suffering in the day of judgment is a prevention from that punishment in hellfire. So you might be punished for it in the day of judgment, and you will not even touch the hellfire because of that sin. You will not punish for that. من إحدى مكفرات الذنوب هو أهوال القيامة وعرصاتها كما قال العلماء. And Allah knows best. Good question.